fundamental to our success in business. And this is where we're experiencing such a massive change. And what I'm trying to do with my clients is answer two very simple questions. The first is you have to know where you are. So where are we? You know, let's take a little time and figure out where we are. But the more important question is, where are we going? And a lot of businesses just don't have the time and energy and resources to take time to ask these questions. And so as a consultant, I'm able to come in and spend that time and try to answer these two questions, because once you figure out where you are and where you're going, the vision then can be set for how we want to communicate in the future. There's been a lot of market pressures, certainly social media. We all know how we interact with each other in social media. But yes, this hasn't quite transitioned into the business world yet. We're still using email and phone calls. And there's been this push to figure out, well, how can we add these other channels of communications? Rise of mobility. You know, there's 100,000 people here in this city, including us, to continue to push forward in the mobile space. And this obviously has changed radically how we communicate. Email is becoming a failure for many people and many companies, where we're getting too much email. We don't know what's important. You know, we're missing things, and it's getting very unruly. And then we've got the opportunities of the cloud, and we've all keep hearing about the cloud, but the cloud is beginning to bring technology and applications and make it much easier and much faster to deploy solutions. So you take all of these changes, and they really are, in my opinion, revolutionary. They really are ushering in a new era of communications that has been slowly evolving. Well, we're reaching the point where it can't evolve anymore. We need real change. And what we're seeing is that the old technology companies have not been able to keep up. This list contains many of the great telecommunications companies of the last 170 years. Siemens, founded in 1847. Certainly the Nokias and Lucent, Avaya, Ericsson, Nortel, and Alcatel. All of these companies were in business for an average of 140 years as communications technology companies. Many of them, such as Nortel, are no longer around. Others have shifted into other spaces in communications technology, but are no longer offering enterprise solutions, or have shifted into more of an infrastructure mode. And so we're seeing that basically a lot of the old foundational companies in telecom are no longer operating in that capacity. And then when you look at the current technology leaders, Cisco, Microsoft, Apple, Google, and Facebook, we can see that they've been in business an average of 28 years. So these much newer companies have done a much better job growing and evolving in this space. And their combined market cap is $2 trillion. Okay, so while these other companies are going through bankruptcy that were around for a century and a half, these companies that haven't been around very long are absolutely driving the industry and doing a very good job. But even themselves are having to reinvent with market disruptors such as Slack. You know, they've got 3 million daily active users, and they've only been in business for 3 years. Certainly WhatsApp, which I know many of you use, although in North America our market penetration is only 7%, there's over 1 billion users worldwide, and that's just in 7 years. So as we see companies like, Avaya, who has its genesis in the U.S. from the very beginning of communications back to the teletype days. We're seeing them going through a massive debt restructuring and bankruptcy, while these other companies, just in a period of 6-7 years, are growing at a massive rate. And so we thought in our industry that unified communications was the answer. We need to take these different methods of communications and unify them together. And while that was a noble goal, it wasn't the revolutionary change that people were looking for. It was mainly taking existing technologies and helping to try to make them more efficient. And what we're seeing now is more of a ground-up approach to addressing how we collaborate. This is really the most important thing for businesses to get right in the future, to go beyond just how we communicate via conference calls and meetings, but to really have true team collaboration tools. And I really believe that this will completely change this industry. And we're already seeing companies like Cisco move all of their chips onto the table and really place a big bet that team collaboration is really the future. And the thing I like about this is it's designed from the ground up to help teams work better together. And rather than say, well, how can we use existing tools, it's basically creating new tools that are designed for that specific purpose. There's a couple of other things I really like about them too. Another is that they're designed for a mobile-first world. So the interfaces and the tools themselves are built with mobility in mind from the get-go. Everything else we've been doing has kind of been an adaptation. So we've got this tool on my desktop. Well, how can we make a mobile client that does the same thing? And the experience as you go down that line turns out not to be very good because it was kind of an afterthought. Well, how can we make this mobile? Well, the new tools that are coming out are designed with that from the get-go. And I think probably the third and most important, exciting element that will make this a different, more of a revolutionary product is the idea that they're being built with integration in mind from the get-go. So in the very DNA of these products and services themselves are the ability to tie in other applications. So whether it's a CRM package or business development or operations package or help desk or whatever the application is, these team collaboration tools have that integration, often case, built in from the get-go. Or with their APIs, toolkits can be developed very, very easily. What this does is completely changes how these products and services are procured. It's no longer an RFP process for a phone system. Now we're looking at very customized solutions that are much easier to use, much easier to maintain, and because of the cloud are extremely cost effective. So this presents a very difficult time, and I think in the 23 years that I've been consulting from a procurement perspective, for someone that has to go out and buy a solution today, I think this is the most difficult time. And it's because the industry's in disarray. We have the old companies that are transitioning out of the business, and we have these new entrants that are still trying to develop their products. And so they're in some cases rolling out beta or very early versions of their products that are, quite frankly, can be difficult to use and buggy. So I think it's a very difficult time. But I think there's a few tips that I just wanted to pass along. One was to be realistic with the expectations and understand that these evolving technologies are not 100% yet. They're still being developed. That's why it's such a difficult time now. But I think if one starts small and understands what they want to accomplish, and I think the biggest thing is oftentimes when we looked at buying new technology, we saw it as a need, that we need to replace something, or there's functionality that we want. And what I'm working with my clients on today is to really paint a vision of what are we really trying to accomplish, and try to get executives to really understand what we're doing and why we're doing it. And I think this step gets skipped in most procurement decisions. But once you have a clear vision of how we want to drive profitability or how we want to improve our customer service, I think it becomes much easier to keep a project like this on task. The most important thing is to maintain perspective. And do we have any sailors? Does anybody like to sail in the room? A couple people. All right. This is a new hobby of mine, and I love it. I'm passionate about sailing. I can't wait to buy a boat and spend half of my year in the Caribbean. This is my dream. But I follow sailing very closely, and a couple of years ago in the Volvo Ocean Race, which is around the world sailboat race, this boat hit a reef out in the middle of the ocean. And fortunately, they were able to rescue the crew. It was a very tragic event, but the question is, how can a $20 million boat with all of the technology in the world, with GPS tracking, how can they run into a reef and an island out in the middle of the ocean? How does that happen? And they came to find out that the navigator has this GPS screen, just like in your car, and he was looking at where they were going, but he had zoomed out so far on the map that the little reef, the little island, disappeared from his view. And so while he knew what direction they were going and knew their ultimate destination, he had gotten so far high, his view got so high, that he missed this reef that could have killed everyone on board. And I love this analogy because it does two things. Number one, we can't over-rely on technology. We have to, at some point, pull out the old maps and not get so dependent on technology. But the second thing is we need to make sure that we don't zoom in so far that we only see what's directly in front of us, but that we don't zoom out so far that we miss peril in our way. And with this difficult time in this business, I think that managing that balance of perspective is the most difficult and most crucial task, and one that we're all kind of learning as we go to continue to navigate. But the opportunities out there to leverage communications technology to make the changes in businesses that we've always wanted and talked about, I think are now becoming reality. So it's definitely an exciting time for us. And I would love to talk to you more at the end of the presentation, and thank you.